today I'm about trying to give you some tips and things to think about to help this year get started off really well in a routine with practice. And also I want to open up the communication so that if you have any questions or anything at home that you're concerned about, that you reach out to us. So as we kind of talk through these things, I want you to keep in mind these two matrices, or matrices, I guess would be the plural of that. One is on motivation and one is on progress. These are things that I want you to think about in terms of your student and how are they motivated. Because if you know how they're motivated, then it's easier to help with practice and getting them motivated to practice at home. So we've got intrinsic motivation, which is that you're doing something, whatever the behavior is, which in this case is practicing piano because you want to, for the enjoyment of it, or it comes from within. And then you've got extrinsic motivation, comes from without. Your parents telling you to practice, or you're practicing because there's a reward, or you're practicing because you don't want to be embarrassed in lessons. It can be positive or negative. Negative and positive. So quadrant one is that student who practices and wants to practice because they feel good, it comes from within, and they've got that positive reinforcement. And then here is the student that's in 4, negative engagement. They're practicing because maybe their parent has said, if you don't practice, you don't get to go to the birthday party this Saturday or something like that. You know, they're trying to avoid some kind of negative consequence, and it's all coming from without. So we as parents can do a lot to help move our students into quadrant one. That's the ideal, but honestly, that is a very mature thing that sometimes doesn't come until older, you know, high school. You have to end up feeling good about your practices, feeling good about your lessons before you start feeling the need from in here. So we want to make sure that that's what we're trying to do with our practicing and our lessons to do that. And generally, we need to start here with some extrinsic motivation, whether it's just like chores at home or anything else you want your child to do. How do you motivate them to do it? Sometimes you start with sticker charts, or you start with, you know, a system of rewards. It's okay to have some outside motivation, you know, at first. And here we have frequent practice, which is 4 or more times a week. This is infrequent practice along the bottom. That's 3 or fewer times a week. And then we have positive support from parents at home. And this is very little or no support from parents. So no progress is made when we have infrequent practice and no support. The most progress is made when parents are supporting and we have 4 or more times a week practice. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through here. So how do we make that happen? Let's look down at, I think it's number 4. The consistency is more important than the amount of minutes that you practice. So if you have a really busy day, but you get in there and you're 5 minutes at the piano or 10 minutes at the piano, or just it becomes a part of the habit of the day, then it's going to yield a lot more progress, even if you don't have as many minutes as if you had waited and only practiced 1 day a week and practiced double the time. It just works that way. So anything that we want to make a habit for has to be consistent. So if you would think about when is the best time for your student to practice. And it might vary from week to week, but if you can find the same time of day, that's ideal. Or if you can't find the same time of day, if you can find an activity in your child's life that's consistent, and attach the practice to that, like right after supper every day. Might not be at the same time, but it's right at that, you know, it's connected to supper. Or in the morning for school. That's really ideal. There's a lot to be said about rest and waking up and playing rested rather than tired. And another thing about playing before school is even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes, there's very little that conflicts with before school time. And we're talking about soccer is not before school. gymnastics, whatever these other curricular activities, they just generally early in the morning, they're not there. And then spaced practice. Do you know what I mean by spaced practice? Some of you may have heard of this before. It's when you do it spaced out. And there's actually brain research that shows that when you practice a little bit and then you go do something else and then you come back and practice it again, you're not, it's not like the 18th time you've repeated something and your mind's kind of going jelly. You're not paying attention to it anymore. When you come to something cold and you haven't done it, it's the first time that you're trying to do it, you just engage more and it makes the learning a lot more fun. Okay? All right, now once that habit is established, let's think about what is the content of the practice time. Because just because they're practicing doesn't mean we're still going to be making progress. So I'm talking about the what in practice. So we're talking about the structure or the content, and then we'll talk about the how. We're doing something this semester that is going to help, hopefully, with the structure of their practice time. And it relates to what we do in the lesson. And I think you all have actually this handout. But we try to include in our lesson 5 different types of learning processes when we approach learning music. And so when you practice at home, help your student identify when you get your assignment and you read it over with them or you look at it, help them identify, oh, this is one of those foundational things like scales or chords. It might not apply to a piece, but it's just that backbone of our learning. Or this is something that we do in preparation for a song. Like we haven't played the song yet, but we are thinking about the notes, pointing to the notes and singing them, or doing something away from the piano that's helping us prepare for the song. Or we have a song in part. We're actually playing the song now, but we're doing right hand only or left hand only or 2 measures or 1 page or whatever. We always have things in our assignment where we're assigning song in part. And then we have a song in mastery sometimes in our assignment. That's when they're trying to get something ready to check it off, to perform it for family or for the class or whatever. Then the song in creation, that's something that we're going to do this year. We're going to focus on 2 things. One is rhythm, and that's what they're doing across the hall right now, is really understanding and getting a feeling for flow and steadiness in music. And then we're going to work through the year on notation of rhythm, and so that they understand rhythm visually and orally. And then we're also going to work on composing. And every student, we're going to shoot for every student having an original composition by March, and we're going to have a big showcase Saturday when everybody gets to perform their original piece or present it in some kind of way. And all of these other skills are kind of building up to this. That's why this is kind of uphill. And so that's kind of like the culmination. It's like language. We can speak it, we can read it, we can write it, and create our own. That's more hierarchy skill than just participating in it. So anyway, we're not going to have a Christmas ensemble day this year because the time of year that is, we are actually moving, our studio's moving downtown in the Market House area during Christmas and early January. And so we're not going to do a Christmas recital this year, but we are going to have our big showcase in March, and it's going to be compositions and composing. We're going to work with them all along every lesson a little bit, getting it to that point. And I'm hoping that we'll have them skilled at writing their own music, actually writing it, getting it on the computer, and then we'll maybe publish a little book of songs or something. So I'm excited about that. So anyway, help them see when you, or sit down with them on the assignment and help them see, this is that kind of process, this is this kind of skill or whatever, and then they can choose. I need to do this song, or I need to do this part, or I need to do that. Let me have a goal. This practice session, I'm going to work on this, or this. And sometimes it can be all 5 things, sometimes it could just be 2 of the things, or whatever. But throughout the week, try to make sure you're hitting all 5 of them. So, how many of you are real involved with your students' practice, and how many of you are or just able to say, go practice, and they do what they need to do. So.
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. But if you're just checking in with them, you know, and you're talking to them and saying, how are you structuring your practice? What are you working on? What skills are you making sure that you've got, you know, some of this stuff? We're going to be talking to them in class about that kind of thing too. So this will help make sure that their practice is profitable. Okay. The how. Let's look at some of these little takeaways. Do y'all see draw a star by the ones you like to draw? These are some things to keep in mind and to listen for in your child's practice and help them think through. One of them is practice slowly. Okay, practice slowly, because if you do slow, repetitive movements, it's so much easier to learn something correctly, and you're not fixing. So we're going to start talking about 3TR, which is 3 times in a row perfectly. That will indicate mastery. So you don't play something and do it correct, and then you play it again and it's incorrect, and then you play it again and it's correct, and then maybe you play it again and it's incorrect, and then you play it again and it's incorrect, and then you play it again and it's correct. You say, oh, got it. Well, no, you've actually done 3 correct times and 3 incorrect times. You've just kind of, you know, in fact, you're in the hole, because it takes 7 correct repetitions to erase in your brain 1 incorrect repetition. So go slowly at the beginning. Really encourage them to do that. We're just going to be harping on that. And the 3TR, if they, you know, they know they've got something kind of mastered for that day at that point, if they've been able to play it 3 times in a row, for whatever section it is. And then another thing, practice it like you would make a lasagna in layers. So in other words, you're going to, you might do, you might say, okay, my focus for today, or your child might think, I want to really learn this section of this piece. So they're doing a song in part. So do that. Then go and do something else, like a foundational thing, a scale. Then come back to that. Then maybe go and do a piece that you have mastered and learned for fun. Then go back to that. So we keep coming back to that touch point, that thing that we really want to accomplish for that day. And that is good for the brain to bring you back into that over and over and over again. March. This is something that helps us talking to our students about goals, or what do you want to accomplish. If you can make sure that when they say to you, I want to do this, or if you say, what do you want to accomplish with your practice today? Okay, I want to do whatever this is, learn this, you know, whole piece. And then you say, okay, that's specific, and it's measurable. You'll know whether or not that you were able to achieve that goal at the end, but is it attainable? You know, maybe that's too big. Let's bring it down and only say, let's do 4 measures of it, or whatever. Relevant, of course, would be it applies to the assignment, what they're doing, and then time bound. You know that you only have 20 minutes that day or 5 minutes that day. Help them to do goals that are attainable in the time and measurable and specific, so that they feel good when they get up, because they've been able to do it. We have focused on this for a couple of years, the growth mindset, these things that we can say to our students that are help them know they can do hard things, and help them understand that they're capable. These are just some 10 what questions you can begin asking your student, not just about piano, but in things in general. You know, what did you do that was hard today? So that they understand that there's things that are hard. It's not all supposed to be easy. And so they're prepared when it gets a little bit hard, and they don't want to give up. All right? Also, applaud the effort, not the accomplishment. A lot of times, if we spend too much time thinking about the results and not applying the effort, then what we're doing is we're just reinforcing this extrinsic, you know, reward system for them, and we're not helping them feel good from within about the efforts that they're putting in, and that kind of thing. So that's just a couple more things that if we can approach this year trying to get into a real routine and then bring some of these attitudes and ideas in with what we're doing, I think it will be really helpful to make sure that our kids are successful, because we don't want to invest all this time and effort and money into something and then give up.